We're now going to hear from a dear family friend of mine, of the Shores, as well as a beloved teacher of mine who literally knows me since before I existed. Um, I had the great success of growing up in Albany, New York, and as did our next speaker. And as a teenager, coming to shul in Congregation Beth Abraham Jacob in Albany, New York, where I will be visiting actually in 2 weeks, returning to be the scholar in residence in that shul. Um, Sitting literally this close to me in the row in front of me was Dr. Abraham Luchins. Dr. Abraham Luchins, of course, Zichron Livracha, is the father of our guest speaker this morning, Dr. David Luchins. When I graduated high school and made the decision as a public school student to come study in Eretz Yisrael, it was Dr. David Luchins who presented me with a scholarship at NCSY National Convention to be able to spend that year in Israel learning in yeshiva, that formative year that launched my entire career. So Dr. Luchins and I go back literally a lifetime, Baruch Hashem. It's a great excuse to have you here. As always, Dr. Luchins is a long-term officer of the Orthodox Union, of course, one of the deans of TORAH College, a Talmud Mufak of Rav Aaron Salvation, but most importantly to me, he's a mentor and someone who has always availed himself to us at the OU Israel, here at OU Israel for 45 years running, I think. You've spoken at least once a year, if not multiple times each year. Every visit that you've been here, and it's a great success to have you back with us. So thank you very, very much.
I was actually very sad that my streak was to be broken. From 1979, I think the center opened, until COVID, I spoke at least twice a year at the center. Once in the winter, at least once or twice in the summer. Sam, we have to figure out how we're doing Tisha B'Av this year, but we're gonna do it.
We'll figure it out.
We're gonna do it. So and the Israel Center and its programs mean a great deal to me, and I'm extremely proud to be here. I'm also exhausted. Here, I have since Sunday morning. I have spoken at 9 seminaries, and I've given different variations of speeches about contemporary politics. Now we're going to go back a couple of millennia, and we're going to speak about some questions on Purim, culled from my great teachers, Rabbi Joseph, Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik. I spent 4 years with Rabbi Yosher, I was much closer with Rabbi Aaron. I spent 1 year with, a lifetime relationship. I have some Purim material from both of them in this, and of course I'm a little nervous because our friend Paula Weber is here. Paula is a mentor and teacher to me and to so many others. She's a master teacher of Tanakh, and I am going to misquote a pasuk, and Paula's going to just knock. She would never embarrass me. She's going to let my wife know later how I did. We're honored to have Paula here, and she and her husband Marcel were lifetime inspirations to me, as my family may admit to Sam. It's funny. Sam Shore mentions that NCSY scholarship we got there at OUisrael. My parents contributed annually to that scholarship. So not that they gave dafka for Sam, but I'm sure how much proud my father would be to know that after all these years, Sam Shore remembers the scholarship, and how proud we all are of Sam. Okay, now we finished the Albany Pride part. I'm also really nervous that my wife's going to walk in during the program. Like, I'm really nervous. I remember about 20 years ago, I was notified to chair a program where my bestie, my close friend in the world, Rabbi Zev Leff, was honored. And Rabbi Wein was the guest speaker. Rabbi Wein got up and he said that his wife, Jackie, would only come to the dinner to hear Rabbi Leff. So I can say it's safe to say my wife only came today to hear Rabbi Wein. I had to sit with Paula. Okay. I'm going to raise, in the spirit of the next big holiday, Passover, I'm going to raise 4 questions. 2 fundamental Purim questions you most likely have heard and have thought about. And I've seen multiple answers to. And there are multiple answers to both. I'm going to give you Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik's answer to one, Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's answer to the other. Since they come from the same playpen, the answers will be a bit interrelated. Then we're going to answer 2 ancillary questions. Minor questions you probably haven't thought of, but I find very interesting. And again, one from Yosher and one from Rav Aaron. And then I have a really wicked Purim joke to end with. that when I told her American Salvation, he laughed for about 5 minutes and he said, "Be careful where you say that." I think the OUisrael Center, there's no press in the room, is there? The OUisrael Center is a safe place to say it. In the current political environment in the United States, I'm not sure it's even publicly safe to say it publicly, but we're in Israel, so I'm going to say it. Okay. Question number 1. Kimu v'kiblu. One of the big things about Purim is that the Jews arose and re-accepted the Sinaitic covenant. It's a little confusing, says Rav Yoshe Ber, and say many other people. It's the Gemara says in Shabbat. What? Because the Gemara says that by Sinai it was forced on them, the Torah. Kafa aleim har kegigit. God held the mountain over them. This is an allegory, and my rebbeim say, and said, "Kiblu na torati or sham yeh kvuratchem." You will be buried if you don't accept the Torah. And it was forced on them. Whoa, says everybody. It was forced on them. Kimu v'kiblu means they finally accepted it willingly. Na'aseh v'nishma. Do we make a big deal about it? We even have a Shabbat Zemer about it. Na'aseh v'nishma is the most glorious moment in Jewish history. We voluntarily said we'll accept the Sinaitic covenant, we'll accept the Torah. So Tosot and Shabbat explains that the acceptance at Sinai was only of Torah Shebetav. They were forced to accept Torah Shabbat Peh, which then willingly accepted on Purim. Why? What's going on? So that's question number 1. It's hard to understand. Question number 2 from Aaron Soloveitchik is what the Gemara says, what was the Aveirah of the generation that they were Chayev Kliya, they were going to be destroyed. Shenene Mesuda Sha'oto Rasha. They went Tachas Suda. My wife and I were invited in 1972 to Richard Nixon's Christmas party. I went to I had been a national, I've only worked in presidential campaigns in my life for pay. I worked for Hubert Humphrey in 1972 when he lost the nomination to George McGovern. Picked up the phone, he called his arch enemy, Richard Nixon, and I got a job as a national vice chairman of Democrats for Nixon. So I only worked for 2 great Americans in 1 year, Humphrey and Nixon. So at the end of the year, I got my reward. I got a great 3 times a day, no show, federal consultantship. They paid for our co-op apartment. Thank you, Richard Nixon. Anyway, no complaints. But we also got invited, Rosemary Woods, I remember that name, Paul, and invited us to the White House holiday party. Everyone else was invited to the White House Christmas party. The entertainment was, I'm not making this up, you can't make this up. The entertainment was the German War Orphans Choir. And the guest speaker was Cardinal Kroll. So I went to Rav Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik. I knocked on his apartment. I said, Rebbe, he said, you must go. You must go. You don't insult the President of the United States. He said, my grandfather, my grandfather, when he was invited to go to the Tsar, he went to the Tsar. You go. He said, wish him a happy holiday. Go. So we went to the White House. The orange juice was delicious. Now hold that thought, because we're going to tell you about another party we went to 50 years later, which is 40 years later, which is very interesting. But let's continue. So I don't get it. My Rebbe told me to go. Not only that, the Gemara tells us Achashverosh was a liberal. He respected all different ethnic traditions. Everyone had their own national dietary customs deeply respected. The meat was not kosher. Everything, the cheese was all this around, they were not served together. Everyone, Ish, and the only 2 people called Ish in the Megillah, Mordechai and Haman. And both of them, and everyone else in between, their traditions were respected. So what was wrong with going with the Sudah? And what was the tshuva, says Rav Aaron, for this terrible Aveira? How were they forgiven? Question 2. Now for our 2 small little questions. Question 3. Every time the king asks Esther anything, Esther asks the king anything in the 4th, 5th, 6th chapter of Esther, Achatzi Amachut. Achatzi Amachut. We all know that term, right? You can anything Achatzi Amachut. And in the 8th and 9th chapter of Megillat Esther, when they're asking for far more. They're not asking, it's not a dinner invitation. It's an invitation to arm yourself and protect yourself. An invitation to have an extra day to kill your enemies. No Chatzia Malchut. What happened to our Chatzia Malchut? Why does it leave the king's vocabulary? We'll give us an answer. And then the last question, which always troubled me as a kid. It really did. And then I heard an answer from our Salvation. It makes so much sense. I think you'll like it too. I don't know how many of you ever thought of the question. What's that 10th parak of Megillat Esther? It is the second shortest parak in the whole Tanakh. There's one parak in Tehillim with 2 psukim. It's 3 psukim long. It has nothing to do with the Purim story. It has to do with the Megillah story. What's it doing there? Now, again, in the Apocrypha, in our Christian Apocrypha, those are the first 3 chapters. Verses are a much longer parak. And it goes on for, 70 parakim or something. Don't read it. Don't waste your time with this. But why are these 3 psukim part of Tanakh? What are they doing there? Okay, let's start with the beginning, if we can, of the Purim story. To paraphrase Karl Marx, and I should never do that here. To Karl Marx, there was a specter, a nightmare that had the crowned heads. He took the crown. He called it communism. We're talking about something else. The kings of the ancient Near East were terrified by the prophecies of Jeremiah and Isaiah. Because Jeremiah had been on target. God will destroy this house. And Jeremiah had said it will be 70 years and you'll come back. And the Jewish prophets made it very clear when they came back that it would come back in triumph. And so they were very worried. They counted the days with trepidation. We know this is a very powerful God. And for some reason, he let his people be exiled and their temple be destroyed. But if indeed this fellow Jerry is correct, then at the end of 70 years, it's all gonna be over for us. And Belshazzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, grandson, depending on which, was counted the days from the Nevuah of Yirmiyahu, from the original Nevuah. 70 years is up. 70 years is up. Nothing happened. That God's on vacation. He's angry. He resigned. Terrific. And he threw a party to celebrate the fact that he had beaten the God of Israel and the prophecy of Jeremiah. You know the story of the book of Daniel. He put on the garments of the high priest. He took out the kelim of the Beit HaMikdash to show us which had been treated with reverence and respect. Because maybe, just maybe, this God's going to come back. And now it's over. We won! Then the hand appears, the handwriting on the wall. And Daniel comes in and tells them, it's over. That night, Cyrus and Darius destroy the Babylonian Empire. Ahasuerus eventually becomes king. And he is petrified. Because what he's worried, maybe that 70 years was miscalculated. I got it, he says. It's from the time the first Jewish foot hit the ground in exile, in chains in Babylonia. That's the exile of Yechaniah. That says Rav Yoshe Be'er is why Megillat Esther we read in Eichel in many places about the Galut of Yechaniah. Because Yechaniah's Galut is the beginning. Foolish, Belshazzar, his father-in-law says Ahasuerus. He calculated from the original prophecy. Yeah, I calculated when the prophecy started. And I'm counting down the days. I am scared. I'm sweating. The 70 years are up. The 70 years from when Yechaniah arrived in exile. We're going to throw a party. We won. And he throws a 180-day party like you never saw. Then another 7-day party. There's nothing in the entire Tanakh where a party, not Shlomo B'Shaito, where a party is described in the detail of the party of Ahasuerus. This party of victory over the God of Israel. And he takes the same act. He puts on the clothing of Kohen Gadol from the State Museum and the kelim. And we do with an Eichel Trop, the kelim shonim. The kelim Beit HaMikdash are the serving vessels. Mordechai gets up and says, guys, you can't go. You can't go. It's usher. Mordechai. It's glad kosher meat. You can't go. The purpose of this feast is to declare victory over the prophecy of the God of Israel. You can't go, says Mordechai. Listen, we've consulted with the entire leadership of the Conference of Presidents of Jewish organizations of Media and Persia. And if we want to know if chicken's kosher, Mordechai, we will come and ask you if chicken's kosher. We'll consult with the Sanhedrin about chicken being kosher. This is a political question. We don't need askanim for political decisions. We need social influence media. I don't know what else they use. We have made this decision based on our great knowledge, what's best for the Jews. We're sorry, Mordechai, we're all going. And they all went. They took part in the Sudan. And when they were saved, what saved them? Now, they have no reject Rabbi salvation here now. The Avera was, we now see very clearly, Nem the Sudash, Oto Rasha, Beli Rishut Chachamim. It was a Sudat Rishut. The food were uniting, the food was kosher. It was not prepared by non-union labor. It was not, it did not include, any foods from, picked by slaves, right? It was all very high quality, no moral. That's even, or a question. One small problem. The purpose of the Suda was to celebrate the defeat of the God of Israel, the defeat of the prophecy of Jeremiah. Because he calculated from the Nevuah of Nechaniah instead of calculating from the Churban Beit Mikdash, is when the 70 years actually was supposed to be calculated. And so, what Esther asks Mordechai, Al Zev Yam Maseh. Chazal saying in the Gemara, did they reject? Had they rejected God? Is that Kedei Vanveyu? Had they rejected the Chot? Mordechai says no. They ate the Sudat. Esther comes up with a brilliant solution. They ate the Sudat, Harasha, B'li Rishut Chachamim. The tshuva, says Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, is the tshuva is to give up the Sudat mitzvah, the most beloved Sudat mitzvah of the Jewish year. It's the afternoon of the 13th of Nisan. We need to do tshuva. We're going to fast straight through Seder night. We're not going to eat matzah. It's our Savior Raita. We're not going to eat a Sudat Pesach. There'll be no Sudat. We'll have a Seder without wine, without matzah. Yesh koch v'yatzacham oker davar min Torah v'shevi al ataseh. There is a principle in oral law that the rabbis have the right to tell you not to blow shofar in Rosh Hashanah. The rabbis have the right to tell you not to take a lulav on Sukkot. The Torah says, take! The rabbis say, shevi al ataseh. Now let's go back to Kimu v'Kibbu, to Rabbi Yoshe Soloveitchik. I told you about it. By the way, anything that comes that makes sense is my rebellion. Anything that makes no sense is my inability to properly present it to you. So don't be upset with them. Be upset with me. I can handle it. Let's continue. Says Rav Yoshe Soloveitchik. When the Jews said, we Na'aseh v'nishma, we want to hear Nishma, we want to hear from you, from the Navi, God. We don't need to hear from you, God. That's pretty scary. We want to hear from the Navi. We want a Navi like Moshe. We want direct Nevuah. We don't want this oral interpretation. We do not want to have a batch of rabbis explain to us what Tzon Hashem is. We want a Navi telling us in real time. I just checked in with God. This is what God says to do. We don't want this in the rabbinic immediate. I hold the mountain over you. Sham yekvurachem. Why does it say, says Rav Yoshe Beer? Why doesn't it say, oh yeshuvurachem? Here you're going to be destroyed. Why does it say, there you'll be destroyed? Because Sham is Shushan, says Rav Yoshe Beer. There'll be a point in Jewish history, says the Rav, when the voice of Nevuah will be stilled. When the door of prophecy will close. A good time, the door of prophecy. Both Hebrew and English. Time will come where you will not have direct pipeline to God. You have to rely on the Chachamim. And you must accept that. Because in the future, a moment will come that you will be destroyed if you don't. That moment was then. That was the first moment in Jewish history. The Jewish people faced a crisis. It's Kabbalah the Torah without nevuah. It was the first crisis of Hester Panim. The first crisis, so God's name is not in the beginning. It's Hester Panim, as God had promised us in the Torah would happen. It is the first time there's no direct pipeline. We say, go to the Suda. The Melech is giving us a God kosher meal. Our leadership says to go. These silly rabbis, they don't go. What's our tshuva? We accepted the oral law, didn't we? We fasted. How can we fast on Pesach night? We showed the power of the Chachamim. We're machni ourselves. We accepted the tremendous koach of the Chachamim that we didn't eat on Pesach night. It says from Aaron Soloveitchik, Esther could have called a fast for Chodesh Iyar. She didn't have to do it. You have 11 months to do tshuva before the date. She called a fast on the afternoon of the 13th, or late in the day of the 13th, into the morning of the 15th. Dafka! So the Jewish people, whenever they heard the word, would not eat matzah that night, would not have a Seder Suda that night. Think about it. You have the most beloved meal of the Jewish year. The United States, 20 something. There's studies that show that upwards to 90% of American Jews take part in what they consider a Passover Seder. It's an astonishing data. It's an astonishing data point. 1/3 believe in God, and 90% of a Seder. Think about it for a second. Al Yom Hazeh is such a beloved mitzvah, so beloved to the Jewish people. Don't have the meal. Have this. That is a raw, stark acceptance of rabbinic power. Don't have your Suda on Pesach night. Now again, any Jew that did that is accepting the Koch HaChamim, which was forced on them at Sinai. Thank God it was forced on them. Had it not been forced on them, they would have obviously refused to accept Esther's crazy idea. We're in enough trouble with God, we should give up the mitzvah. He wants to do mitzvahs. Accepting Kayach HaChamim. Halavai, we still all felt that. To accept the Koch HaChamim. To accept the power. I was just giving you an analogy. Did I give my wife my phone? Anyway, did I give you my phone? Oh, must have. Anyway, this is a candy bar, guys. This candy bar has 30,000 likes on Instagram and on Facebook, and has 6 social media influencers that recommend it. Doesn't have a hashgacha, you're not going to eat it, are you? But we get our news from that way. We get our political views that way. Check with the OU. Check with the Aguda. Enough from you. Check with APAC. But we don't check with other sources. We allow and we want to have a chicken's kosher. We ask a rabbi. We want to know what to do to help OUisrael. We ask our hormones. Our hormones. We have to ask Shalot. I'm not telling you which rabbi to follow. I'm not telling you which Torah to follow. They're not competing ones. I'm an OU officer. You can get some idea who I'm Tom of the Soloveitchiks, and I've said. You know what we say in YU. There is no such a thing as Das Torah. Soloveitchik told me so, and I always follow him. Glad you like it. So question 1 was Kimu v'Kiblu. And the reason that they Kimu v'Kiblu was they realized their lives had been saved by accepting, 500,000 before, accepting the oral law. But at this moment, when the voice of prophecy ended, they were saved by the oral tradition concept of the power of the Chama. My wife and I, 40 years after that, over 40 years after the Nixon holiday party, Christmas party, we were invited to Barack and Michelle Obama's Hanukkah party. We walked in, and there was a big sign. We walked in. Hamish Shrita. Hamish Shrita. Hamish Shrita. None of this OU stuff. Hamish Shrita. Because Menachem Genak of the OU had supported Hillary Clinton, so no more OU. Hamish Shrita. Pas Yisrael. Bishul Yisrael. I'm looking at the sign. My wife was into my ear. Sudas Achashverosh. The OU had told me to go. I had asked my son. As a matter of fact, when I called one of my close friends who's a gadol OUisrael, he said, "Can you get me a ticket?" So I take that as a header. Okay. Can you get me a ticket? He said. Okay. It was a nice evening. It was really cool watching a Marine band. Which band, Vivian? The Army, who? Marine Corps band playing Hanukkah songs. They had music in front of them. They didn't know one word of Hebrew. The music. And the coolest thing in the wall was when the little Chabad boy came up. And by the way, there are only 3 Jewish groups have been welcomed in the Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden, hopefully Trump again, White House. Only 3 Jewish groups were welcomed, every one of them. Yehuda, the OU, and the Lubavitch. Because all 3 basically have this attitude of trying, working with the cover of the government without, That being said, this is the Chabad boy. He said, like the Hanukkah left. There's the 13th of Kislev, this party. He's starting to sing the brachas. How does he say Shem? He says Shem Malchus. I'm stunned. And then he makes the bracha you say when you see the president of the United States. And I think it was a Reform rabbi, who's a woman wearing a yarmulke. Behind me says, "Is that the Orthodox Hanukkah blessing?" I said, "Only when the president and first lady are present." For those who want, the high point of the evening was we have a picture of the house, and I always tell everybody, Michelle Obama is showing her Second Amendment rights to bear arms. I teach in a women's college. That joke goes over so well in a women's college. Okay. So to get back to our questions, mention seriousness. Question 1, we understand Kimu Kiblu. Question, Rav Yoshe Bear, thank you. Question 2, Representative Aaron Soloveitchik on how the tshuva for the Suda was to fast. And now for our two ancillary questions, little side questions we asked. At Chatzia Malchut. What did At Chatzia Malchut mean? Does anyone in the room know the Gemara? Remember the Gemara? The Beit HaMikdash. There was a tremendous tension at that time between the Jews and the Shomronim about the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. And everyone had sent delegations, like Haman and Mordechai, the heads of delegations. Tremendous tension. Achashverosh didn't want to hear about it. I worked for Senator Moynihan for 20 years. I was with him on a number of occasions in the White House. And there were certain things we were told, don't mention. You can't. Welcome to the Oval Office. Don't you dare say the following. Certain things are out of bounds. When the OU was invited, my friend Marcel Weber was one leader of the group, to meet with President Bush, the first Bush, the Friedrich Bush. That's my Chabad roots. And by the way, the second Bush is still alive. Anyway, the Friedrich Bush, no one got that one. I said the second Bush is still alive. No one got it. Anyway, the Friedrich Bush. We were told in advance. That was the time to fight. Bush was had to fight with Israel about the loan credit, the loan guarantees. You may ask us anything you want with the president, not the loan guarantees cannot be brought up. I can't bring it up. It's 9 as you're getting the White House invitation. I met with Bill Clinton, with President Clinton, with Senator Moynihan, at a very tense time in American-Israeli relations, and we're coming ostensibly to discuss something else. They took one look at my yarmulke, and I got pulled aside and said, I hope the senator does not plan to raise X. We didn't. Because you understand there's certain etiquette, there's certain rules. The president sees you, don't you dare. There still is. If you want to get you know how fast you get thrown out of a White House thing. I'm not here to make any comments on temporary politics. I think Arthur Vandenberg, who was Harry Truman's arch political enemy, said politics ends at the ocean when the ocean starts. And I'm overseas. I'm not going to discuss domestic American politics. It's too depressing. Anyway, much too depressing. Let's back to this. The Beit HaMikdash was a divisive topic. Says Achashverosh, anything you want, just don't raise the issue which divides my kingdom, which is such a shalom, such a divisive issue. Don't bring it up. Suddenly, when he discovers who Esther is, and Esther and Mordechai reassure him that the same Jeremiah, whose prophecies he feared so, says Rav Yoshe Bear, is the same Jeremiah who said, You must respect the country you've been sent to exile to. You must pray for it. Build houses there. Live there with great respect. Respect them. Kvod Malchut. And you know something? He calms down. That nightmare goes away. The fever breaks. And he never again says in the rest of the Megillah, Akatzi Malchut. That leaves his vocabulary. It's no longer an issue he's scared about. It's a little scary. Now, what about that strange last paragraph? Now remember, this is the Sefer of Hester Panim. This is the Sefer of Tanakh without God. Do you have a hand? I just was stretching. I thought you were going to tell me Pshat. Sorry, sir. So excited I have Pshat. I've never seen any Pshat except Ramaran Salvations, and I love it. Ramaran says like this. You're writing a Sefer. We'll get to the joke in a moment. But you're writing a Sefer, which is going to have in it. It's going to have in it a story of a king making a dumb mistake and of the king's mistake being rectified. This thing not exactly in the most noble fashion. And everything working out well, and you can't mention God. It's the last thing you want to mention. You have to make the story and explain it in a normative term. Now, we all know the coincidence is an 11-letter English name for God. But you got to you got to get God out of the story. Tell a story without God. And the way you do it is, you tell the story. The way you tell the story. We'll take a minute break. All right. The way you tell the story. Says Soloveitchik. The way you tell the story is that you are very careful. You take it in seemingly normative terms. So here's Ramaran Soloveitchik's neo-Marxist explanation of the Purim story. The king is throwing prolificate parties. Known every party like him. Look at the descriptions in the Bible. Party after party is bankrupting the kingdom. Begins terrorists were treasury officers. That says that was their job. They're infuriated. Look at the Midrash. They said this drunken boor is looting our treasury. They plan to kill him. Mordechai saves his life. Haman rises to power with a simple solution to the economic problem, one that's been tried all too many times in history. Kill the Jews and take their money. It was Aldous Huxley who wrote, if you don't believe you're saved in my Savior's blood, I will drown you in yours. Simple solution. The king is such a nut. The king is such, he says to Haman, the money's yours. 10,000 Gikare Kesef from the Jewish wealth. Mordechai and Esther, with the help of God, not mentioned in the Megillah, succeed in overcoming this plot. And what does the king say to Mordechai and Esther? The Jews get all the money of their enemies. It says 3 times in Megillah Esther. They didn't take 1 red cent. They turned down the money. They gave it all to the royal treasury, says Ramaran. And they rectified the national deficit, now without tariffs, by simply giving the money of Haman's, the vast wealth. He was the richest man in the world, it says in the Torah. What a great thought. The richest man on earth. And all his wealth goes to pay off the national debt. What do you do for the future? Mordechai adopts a tax policy and convinces the king to make, I don't know if it's a progressive tax, a flat tax, I don't know. But he makes a tax policy on the entire kingdom. And this straightens out the finances of Persian media. And that's why these 3 psukim are there as a tribute. If you were to write a coda to the book of Esther, what's Mordechai and Esther saved the Jewish people? What's the phrase of Mordechai? The phrase of Mordechai is they made an equitable tax policy that ended this tension in Persian media. Okay, now brings me to my joke, which Ramaran Soloveitchik said was a very wicked joke. Here comes the joke. Esther says, Kitvuni Ledorot. She's a Jewish woman living with a non-Jew. The door of prophecy is ended. She says to the Chachamim, Kitvuni Ledorot. Put this little story of mine, my hubby, my uncle, whoever he is, and I have written into the Bible. How did she convince them? Just don't, please, I'd like to be in the Bible. No. the king said the Jews can take all of the money of Haman and his family. The Jews didn't take a red cent. Government programs are available. The Jews don't take it. That's a nace l'dorot. It never happened. You don't never see anything like that before. The Chachamim put it in the Bible. Okay, I have to end by saying that I'm in awe that the next speaker is Rabbi Berowine. I am from Miami. I was there for Rabbi Berowine's prava. I have revered him, quoted him usually with attribution, ever since. But I want to say something that you probably don't know about Rabbi Wine. I don't think it's widely publicized. Before Rabbi Wine became the head of OU Kosher, kashrut in America meant soap powder and ketchup. It was Rabbi Wine who led the OU into the world of poultry and meat. Most chicken in America they used hot water to remove their feathers, which is halachically questionable. It was Rabbi Wine that convinced the OU, and I was at that meeting as a young board member. I remember what a bitter meeting it was. I remember Rabbi Wine's courage and standing up for what was right. He got a 10-year contract for the OU with Empire, cold water plucking at below. Paula's nodding her head. She remembers those days. At below cost. The OU lost money on that contract. And we lost and we went to the kosher. Rabbi Wine brought us into meat. The galat rate in the largest kosher slaughterhouse in America was 72%. After Rabbi Wine brought halachic standards, the galat rate was, I think, 22% or something. So anyone take time you think about kashrut in America today, the man, in my humble opinion, deserves the greatest credit for taking the OU, making kashrut is Rabbi Baron Wine and one of his other amazing achievements, aside from being a personal mentor. And I'm in awe that I'm getting to speak in his shul in his presence. Thank you very much.